When America stepped into Afghanistan in 2001, the world believed it was the beginning of a decisive victory. A technologically advanced superpower entering one of the poorest nations on Earth. Satellites, drones, special forces, billions of dollars, global intelligence networks, against a country barely healed from decades of war. On paper, the outcome looked obvious. But Afghanistan has a long memory, a deeper history than most nations can imagine. And woven into that history were warnings America never noticed, warnings that predicted exactly why the U.S. mission would struggle and ultimately fail. To truly understand why America miscalculated Afghanistan, you must go back long before 9/11, before the Taliban, before the Soviet invasion. Afghanistan has been called the graveyard of empires. But this phrase isn't about geography, it's about misunderstanding. Foreign powers didn't fail because Afghanistan was unbeatable. They failed because they never learned how Afghanistan works, how Afghans think, how their society survives, or how their identity was forged through hundreds of years of resisting outsiders. America wasn't the first to underestimate this, and it may not be the last. When U.S. troops arrived, they believed they were fighting a war of technology, intelligence, and strategy. But Afghanistan's history revealed a completely different type of battlefield, one defined by tribal loyalty, local power dynamics, shifting alliances, rugged landscapes, and a culture shaped by resistance. Empires came with blueprints, strategies, and assumptions. Afghanistan responded with something America didn't expect: patience. From the very beginning, Afghanistan's past predicted the major mistakes the U.S. would make. History showed that Afghanistan does not fall quickly. It does not accept foreign-imposed systems easily. It does not change because someone powerful demands it. This has been true since the British invasions in the 19th century. The British Empire, confident in its global supremacy, entered Afghanistan, expecting a fast victory. They left devastated, humiliated, and confused. They, too, believed military power would reshape Afghan society. They, too, believed Afghans would accept a new political order. They were wrong, and America repeated the same belief nearly 150 years later. Then came the Soviet Union in 1979. One of the largest armies in the world marched into Afghanistan with tanks and mechanized divisions. Attempting to install a government aligned with Moscow, they expected submission. Instead, they found a nation that fought in mountains, villages, valleys, deserts, and caves, with tactics impossible to counter with conventional force. The Soviets spent nearly a decade trying to defeat an enemy without uniforms, without ranks, without front lines. And the lesson was clear: Afghanistan is not a country where you win by defeating an army. You must understand the society. You must earn trust. You must know the tribes. You must navigate the local networks. America saw this example, but history was ignored. Afghanistan's story is built on alliances that shift silently. Warlords become partners one year and rivals the next. Villagers may support you by day and oppose you by night. A handshake does not mean loyalty. A promise does not mean permanence. And a friend today can become the enemy tomorrow. America, used to structured agreements and formal deals, entered a world where agreements meant something entirely different. The U.S. relied on warlords who exaggerated threats for money. They trusted intelligence that was manipulated by locals, settling old tribal disputes. They funded militias who used U.S. weapons to strengthen their own power, not America's mission. Afghanistan's history warned that relying on the wrong partners would collapse any foreign strategy. Yet the U.S. repeated exactly that pattern. Another historical signal came from Afghanistan's geography. Foreign powers always believed they could control Afghanistan by controlling its capital, Kabul. But Afghanistan is not a country defined by its capital. It is defined by its regions. Kabul is only one piece of a much larger mosaic. Pashtun South, Tajik North, Hazara Central Highlands, Uzbek Northwest, tribal belts along the Pakistan border, and countless sub-tribes divided by mountains and valleys. America believed taking Kabul meant taking Afghanistan. History clearly shows that Afghanistan's real power lies in the countryside. For centuries, Afghan rulers who neglected rural power structures lost the country, yet the U.S. built most of its strategy around cities, bases, and formal institutions. The culture of Afghan resistance has another deep root: time. Afghanistan does not fight short wars. The British, Soviets, and now Americans all expected quick outcomes. But Afghan fighters, regardless of who they are, do not operate on deadlines. They can wait years, even decades. They believe survival is victory. The Taliban understood this perfectly. They knew the U.S. would not stay forever. They knew money, politics, and public pressure in America would eventually demand withdrawal. Meanwhile, they hid in mountains, crossed borders into Pakistan, rebuilt slowly, waited for the moment when Americans would grow tired. History predicted this strategy. The U.S. focused on immediate results. Afghanistan focused on the long game. America also misunderstood Afghanistan's social fabric. Afghanistan is not a single identity. It's a collection of identities layered over centuries. Afghans do not pledge loyalty to a single national identity the same way Western nations expect. They pledge loyalty to family, tribe, region, tradition, and faith. Often before the idea of a modern state, the U.S. attempted to build a Western-style government, expecting instant nation-building in a place where national unity has always been delicate. Previous empires tried the same and failed for the same reasons. The U.S. plan ignored Afghan history's greatest lesson. Foreign-ized governments rarely survive because they do not match local realities. At the same time, Afghanistan's history showed something else. Afghans accept change only when they believe it comes from within. The U.S. brought billions of dollars, schools, hospitals, and reconstruction projects. Many Afghans benefited, but many also saw these changes as foreign-driven, foreign-funded, and foreign-controlled. History predicted that this would create resistance. The same pattern happened with the Soviets, who also tried modernization projects. When change is not rooted in Afghan culture, it does not last. And when it is supported by foreign military forces, it becomes even more fragile. Another major historical warning was the understanding of Afghanistan's rural economy. In many regions, opium poppy cultivation is not just a crop, it's survival. Previous empires tried to control it and failed. America attempted to eliminate poppy fields without creating equal economic alternatives. This forced many farmers into the arms of the Taliban, who protected crops and offered income. The pattern repeated from previous eras, yet America expected a different outcome. America also underestimated how Afghan fighters adapt. Afghanistan's history shows that locals weaponized the terrain. They turned mountains into fortresses, valleys into traps, caves into networks. They fight in shadows. They hit when least expected. America entered with superior firepower, but discovered that in Afghanistan, mobility and local knowledge are more powerful than technology. Drones can see far, but they cannot read intentions. Satellites can track movement, but not loyalty. Night vision can show silhouettes, but not truth. Afghanistan has beaten stronger armies using the same principles for centuries, and history predicted the limits of technology in such terrain. Another miscalculation, rooted in history, was the assumption that building an Afghan national army would stabilize the country. Afghanistan's history shows that no national army survives without unified national identity. The U.S. trained and armed thousands, but loyalty was divided. Some soldiers fought for money, some for tribe, some for survival. When the Taliban advanced in 2021, history repeated itself. Armies collapsed, not because they were weak, but because they were not unified under a single cohesive identity. Afghanistan's past warned that building a Western-style army requires more than weapons. It requires shared purpose, which Afghanistan never had fully formed. Perhaps the most important historical warning was this: Afghan political power does not collapse from direct confrontation, it collapses from within. Empires lose because their strategies slowly unravel behind the scenes. And once momentum shifts, it shifts fast. The Soviet-backed government fell quickly after the Soviets left, even though it seemed stable. The US-backed Afghan government fell even faster for the same historical reason. Once Afghans believe a foreign power is leaving, alliances shift overnight. People change sides to survive, and the country transforms instantly. America did not understand how fast this shift can happen, even though it had happened before. In the end, Afghanistan's history was not hidden. It was clear. It was written in the stories of past invaders, past empires, past mistakes. And every piece of that history predicted the challenges America would face. The lesson was not that Afghanistan is undefeatable, but that Afghanistan must be understood before it can be changed. America brought power. Afghanistan brought patience. America brought plans. Afghanistan brought history. And history won. If you enjoyed this deep, eye-opening analysis, make sure to visit the channel for more powerful videos like this. Your next big insight is just one click away.